Hello everyone and welcome to the weekly update for week 7 of Strikeout. This week I took care of the first boss, the mini-boss for Power McGriff. I also added him into the base scene and added like a ball arc to make it look like he's hitting a home run every time he makes contact with the ball. I also took care of creating the mini-map as well as solving enemy spawning and enemy movement, and then after a certain amount of time the enemy will stop moving and stop following the player. I did a little bit more cleanup to the minimap. I added a model for the icons as well as placed them around the level, and I added enemies to the top tier as well. I started to work on the flexibility for the battle script, and then I finally got that adjusted, which means that I can have multiple enemies and I can have multiple types of enemies that are selected rather than just set pockets of enemies. I also created the boss stage for the mini boss as well as for the major boss, and I think after that we're going to jump into the game. There's a lot to get to this week. So the first thing you might see is we have these little orbs that kind of look like make our players look like they're Oompa Loompas here, and if we turn it on for the game as well, you can see all of our enemies have that same little Oompa Loompa look to it. That is to help us with the minimap, where I have two different cameras that are rendering. One of them is following the players, and the other one is exclusively looking at those orbs and the rest of the environment. So that is kind of cool. So now I'll actually start the game so we can see what's going on. So when you're on your screen, on the minimap screen, you can see all of the different shops, you can see your little players and where they are, and you can also see the enemies that are in blue there. I had to find a color that I wasn't using for one of the players. And if you press the M key, you can sort of see a macro view of the entire level. I want to make sure that wasn't an enemy that was coming after me here. And you can see where some of the enemies are located there, and you can also see that major red dot there, which is considered our boss, which we'll get to here in a minute. So let's take a look at our first mini-boss here, where he's just taking shots and swinging, and the ball is landing somewhere in the stands, and then after a certain period of time it will land. And let's see if we can do a quick little zoom around here. So all of these enemies, there are certain spawn points that they can come into, and there's a certain number of enemies that can spawn. So I think for this particular branch, there's between 5 and 10 enemies that can spawn, anywhere between the 21 spawn points that are possible. I still need to work on the AI a little bit to make sure that they're following us, like that one just clipped through, and that one is following us right now. So let's see here, if we get with outside of a certain range, they should stop following us. There we go. And we'll slide down here, and we can see that I made some cleats for the enemies, or not enemies, the items. That way you can pick those up. And those are still functional, which is kind of nifty. And then if we come around here, we can start to see the king, where there are keys, where there's a lot more of the enemies hanging around back here, and a lot more of the items. I'll eventually want it so when the enemies approach you, then they attack you, but I'm not there yet. So we're going to pick up the keys, and it's going to open up the gates. I could have just slid through the gates, but I wanted to sort of demonstrate everything that we have going right now. And then we will zip right along over here, and I think I needed to turn off the orb for the mini-boss here. So the idea is you need to start leveling up as you start to encounter all of these different enemies, and then the items also won't reappear once you pick them up. That's also a goal, and there's a lot of clipping based on enemy placement and enemy movement, so that's something that I'm going to be addressing in a couple of weeks here. And we're going to work our way back into the mini-boss. So the mini-boss, once you get close, it will prompt some dialogue. Your first major battle here, I'll increase the screen a little bit. We're going against the minor league strongest batter, Power McGriff. We don't have a lot of information on, but he can pack a mean swing. Good luck. And then we're taken into the battle sequence with our friend here. So it's a completely different environment, completely different setting, and then it also is limited to just the one enemy. So if you try to toggle between the enemies like you can with the other scripts, it's not going to happen unless it just happened. So you can see there's a lot of bug fixing that I need to do. I also want to take a look at, let's take care of this guy first. So we're going to take our player and we're going to move him upstairs. So it's not entirely functional yet on how to get up here, but I also have our announcer up here, which I'm pretty pleased with how the announcer turned out. We have him at a little desk, and we have him buried behind his microphone and his little monitor. So this is still a work in progress, but I also have the scene at least built, so that way I can approach it, and it should trigger the dialogue. And then you can get into the battle sequence from there. So it takes you to a new scene, but it's not in an extremely high functional state right now. And then we're going to jump on over into, let's not do that. Okay, so we are in our battle sequence for the concourse area. Right now I have added the, wherever you went, 5 battle stations as compared to 3 in the previous weeks, and they, let's see if I can turn them on, like that. So that's where they are. So when we hit play here, it's going to create a random number between 1 through 5, and based on that number, it will start to populate them inside of this array of players. It will also choose between 1 through 8 based on the number of minor league players that I have ready to go. So if we hit play real quick here, looks like it is 2 players, and you can see what type of minor league players they are. And if I try it again, then there's just 1 player, and these are all based on a weighted average. There's another 2 based on 0 to 100. And if you get like between 90 and 100 on that random number, then it'll do all 5 of them. And if you do between like 40 and 69, it'll do 3 of them. And I'm getting some amazing luck between 1 and 2 of them right now. There's 4 of them, and they're all different. And then since it's not set up properly, then it just kills me and sends me back there. So that is most of the information. So let's slide on over to the Trello board for the week. So for this week, I'm going to finish up the level 1 design for the concourse, make sure the elevator's working, and make sure like there's no clipping or anything going on between the enemies. I also would like to maybe have the camera follow. I also kind of just like it following behind the player, so whenever you turn, the camera just swings with you. I want to have the enemies be able to do different attacks and have those different attacks be displayed in the dialogue option or the text display window that I have going on in the battle sequence. I want to also build into the training section where you can spend the money that you're getting in the battles, which means I need to fix the money system in order to acquire scouting reports so you can know which enemies are weak to what without having to just guess every time, as well as to help level up your players. I also want to get some dialogue writing done, and then the promotion system, once you beat the 2 bosses, it'll carry you into the next level. And I want to finish up the boss fight between Power McGee, as well as the radio and the announcer. So there's plenty of work to be done if anybody would like to jump on board, and this project is moving along quite nicely. I will see you next week.